On today's episode of Locked On 76ers, Mo Bamba is now a member of the Philadelphia squad as they start to reshape their team. How does it look? How does it work out with him in the lineup as a reserve? We'll dive into it next right here, Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. You are Locked On 76ers with Keith Pompey from the Inquirer.com, Sixers beat writer, myself, Devon Givens from 97.5 The Fanatic Radio. Here in Philadelphia, we thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including right here on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Keith, what's happening, man?
What's up, my man? How you been, brother?
Pretty good. It's already Thursday, man. You know, the holiday kind of breaking things up from Monday to where we are Thursday, man.
Yeah, I know, right? No, it's been a crazy week. I say that. It's been a crazy week.
Well, listen, it's been a crazy week in the NBA. That has not stopped since free agency got underway last week. And here we are today where we're now looking at a situation where the Sixers do bring in another body, a veteran in Mo Bamba. We'll talk about him in just a second. We have to tap into the Summer Sixers. So far, 2 games in the Utah Salt Lake City Summer League, where we give our thoughts on some of the things that have stood out from those young players. And also, we'll talk about Nick Nurse coaching the team. I wonder if he's going to coach them in Las Vegas as well. But we'll do that all right here over the course of this episode of Locked On 76ers. Keith, Mo Bamba, a 1-year deal, agreeing to a deal with the 76ers. And as we are now at July 6th, things can become official in the NBA where these announcements will start to drop. So far, as we know, Patrick Beverley and Mo Bamba now a part of the mix, the West Town product with Cam Reddish, right? At the same time, Cam Reddish at West Town.
Yep.
So now he's coming in and he will be one of the backup big men to Joel Embiid. And that can also lead into a little bit of conversation with Paul Reed. Where does that leave him? But Mo Bamba, veteran guy we know that can score a little bit, can run the floor, athletic, can defend. Keith, what do you make of this on a 1-year deal?
You know, it's funny because, you know, yesterday you and I, we both talked about Mo Bamba and, you know, it was one of those things where I'll be honest with you. If, you know, Mo Bamba was waived by the Lakers, he was set to make $10 million, but the Lakers waived him. For $10 million and for multiple years, I don't know if I would gamble on Mo Bamba. I like Mo Bamba. I like his athleticism. I like his rim protection. You know, last year before he was traded to the Lakers from Orlando, he was shooting 39.8% from 3, right? The knock on Mo Bamba has always been does he love basketball? And talking to people in LA, they were talking about how lazy he was. Now, they all said he's a great basketball player, but they all talked about how lazy he was. So if this was a regular lucrative free agent signing, I don't know if I would do it. But when you talk about a guy who's going to get a minimum salary of $2.3 million for 1 year and he comes off your bench and you're still trying to bring in Paul Reed, and you look at the 76ers last year where they didn't have a towering rim protector outside of Embiid on there. I like it because I think it's a low risk, high reward acquisition for a year. If it doesn't work out, he can get waived. If it works out, then possibly you can re-sign him. But you have that flexibility. So for all the things I just said, I do like it. Now, again, if it was for much more money, and I hate saying it, a guy went to West Ham. Right, we get it. But if it was for a lot of money, I don't know if I would be in favor of it.
Same. I thought the number was right. Unfortunately for him, the $10 million didn't work out as the top lottery pick in the draft that he came out of, and Orlando traded him to Los Angeles. Did not play much with the Lakers at all, and now here he is. As you pointed out, they rescinded the, I guess what was that part of his deal, and just decided to move on, and they waived him. So with him being waived, unrestricted free agency, he has to take the minimum, and I'd imagine this is not where he really wanted it to be at this course of his career. But as you mentioned, this is something that if it is about his work ethic and not loving basketball the way that you would hope a player does, especially if you're now creating some assets for him or investing in that player, maybe this will wake him up a little bit. This is now two teams that have moved on from him, the Magic and Los Angeles Lakers. Heck, the Los Angeles Lakers went out there and signed Jackson Hayes, who I also don't think is a very good basketball player either. But they decided to take a chance on him because they saw enough of Mo Bamba with the money piece of it that they felt like it was more beneficial for them to move on. So him coming in, he has a new situation. You're playing on another contending team behind a player like Joel Embiid, who he has a relationship with. They know each other well enough, and they've had some decent battles, if you will, during the regular season when they faced off. This is a pretty good opportunity for him. And also seeing what Nick Nurse has done for other players in Toronto that are long and athletic and has been able to get the best out of them. I wonder if this is a case where he and his representation looked at the Sixers, felt this was the best opportunity, knowing that this money was going to be the same anywhere else that he went, that this was a get right type of situation coming here to Philadelphia with Nick Nurse, Chris Boucher, the outside shooting of him. Mo Bamba is not really a low post, back to the basket type of player. He's more of a face-up guy. Sure, he's long, and he can shoot over the defenders on the low block if he has that type of mismatch. But more so, we saw him work on the perimeter and get some easy buckets based on who he's playing with and getting him some lob opportunities, some quick catch and finish at the rim situations. It's going to be about his defense, though, as you mentioned, and helping to protect the basketball, protect the paint when Joel Embiid is off the floor. The other piece is the minutes of how it's going to be worked out if Paul Reed is back. If Paul Reed re-signs here with the Sixers and he is here, different type of players where Paul Reed is, as you talk about loving basketball, Paul Reed seems like he loves basketball. He's a hustle guy. He will make all the little plays to make sure that you try to win the basketball game. Mo Bamba has that long, laboring, I'll get there kind of thing, where I'm very interested to see the battles between these two of what situational lineups will look like based on the two big men out there behind Joel Embiid, who will earn the minutes more so than the other under a Nick Nurse now regime. So that's going to be interesting. But the money, the years, 1 year, veteran minimum here, it makes sense for the Sixers. Now let's see if Mo Bamba really loves basketball and works his way up where people will now look at him differently, and you won't have that as a piece of now his scouting report, if you will, in the offseason.
Yeah, it should be interesting.
Yep, absolutely. And look, if he's out there, James Harden is here, and he's not moved on from, you do have a point guard that will look for him and find him if he's on the floor at the same time. Those lob opportunities at the rim make things easier for Mo Bamba. All right, some other players that we haven't yet talked about since they were signed on as two-way players after going undrafted. The Summer Sixers. We'll talk about a few of them, in particular, Turk Smith and Ricky Council. The fourth, we'll tell what we've seen so far through two games, how these two young players have fared out, and maybe a few others as well as we continue right here on Locked On 76ers. I have to tell you, though, as we hit the summer right now, I simply have to point out before we get started that this show is sponsored by and brought to you by BetterHelp. And with all of that, when you get into the summer season and you may feel like you've gone through some really grueling months as we got to the summer, and talking about how you felt maybe about things in your life that's going on, where maybe you just don't feel right. You don't feel like yourself. You don't feel like you really feel good about where you are in your place in life as we head into the summer. Well, if you need somebody really to talk to, whether it's about your career, your relationship, and where you are financially, whatever those things are, you have to trust yourself to make the decisions to align with your values. And it's like anything else. The more you practice it, the easier it gets. So, you sometimes in life we're faced with these tough choices, and the path forward isn't always very clear. I've said it myself. I've had those issues before where some points in my life, I can talk to my family and I can talk to my friends. And one thing about them is we are always brutally honest with each other, but just trying to make it work for you. And that's what we do. Be brutally honest with each other to make sure we're doing what's right for ourselves and giving the best advice possible. Well, now, there's some benefit with therapy as well. And I encourage you to check out BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, you should give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. You don't have to get in your car and go anywhere. It's definitely very convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get a match with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge if you feel that's necessary for you and your situation. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Thanks for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. Every day is tomorrow on the show. We will talk about the latest with the basketball team, see where things are as the roster is starting to shape up. What's next for this basketball team? What do they need to focus on next to continue to fill out this roster? That'll be tomorrow here on Locked On 76ers. Keith, with that, filling out the roster, the Summer League right now in Utah before we get to Las Vegas and things really start to kick off for the NBA. They have two games in the books. They're 1-1. But I've seen a few players that I've liked, and we talked about the undrafted guys, but I want to start with you first. Jaden Springer's on this team. Lewis King is also on the Summer Sixers in Utah, and a couple of the young players also that we've mentioned before, they're on the squad. But beginning with you first, what do you think, man? What have you seen? Has any of these players really stood out to you? Philip Petrusev, a guy we've talked about before, coming from overseas, played college ball at Gonzaga. Is there anybody that really has stood out, or has it just simply been a quiet summer league for you?
Jaden Springer, he has to get his shot down a little bit better, right? Overall, but he's been impressive with his playing on both ends of the floor. I mean, defensively, he's been making acrobatic defensive plays. Like the last game, he had 18 points, 3 assists. He had 2 rebounds. But on the defensive end, my man had 6 steals, right? Now, the one guy is Smith. His nickname Turk, they call him Smith.
Yeah, Terquavian Smith.
Yeah, Terquavian's nickname is Turk, though, right? Is that what they call him? So Turk Smith,
Turk
he's been impressive, with the 14 points. He had, 5 assists. He was the leading scorer the last game as well. The one thing, though, when I look at these games, and Ricky Council, the fourth, his dunks are wow, a highlight waiting to happen. The only thing, D, with me is I look at these games, and last year was the biggest thing to me, where you got a guy like Isaiah Joe who was killing it. I mean, killing it. Now, again, he played 2 years in the league. He was going into his 3rd year in the NBA. And then he gets waived, right? So when I look at these games, a lot of it is, I'm looking at it and it gives me a hard time. It's hard for me to evaluate because you see these guys do stuff, but it's not really telling you how it translates to the NBA level. Is maybe a great barometer to see how these guys translate in the G League, if they're going to be a star or not. But it's just the competition level is good. But again, you want guys to play well as opposed to struggling. And I will say that the guy who's been the most consistent to me is Trev Smith. He had 2 solid games. And but that's just, to me, not to be the negative guy out there, but it's just real. I mean, a prime example, I'm going to just go back. Khalif Wyatt, my first year covering the Sixers, he was amazing in summer league, and didn't even make the Sixers roster. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm at. But Trev Smith has been the most consistent, and the most Turk Smith, most consistent and most eye opening to me.
So Shepard, I've also liked. Didn't know much about him as a point guard. He's played well in these first two games as a guard on this team. Obviously, Turk Smith, as you pointed out, liked him in college at NC State. My only issue with him is he could score, but the problem is he's very, very small, and he can run a team. He can score. He doesn't defend all that much, but he can fill it up, and he has not disappointed so far through these two games. And obviously, I would like to see how he fares against the teams in Las Vegas, where we see some more talent there, and see how they defend him and try to slow him down. And then Ricky Council, the day we did the podcast after the draft, which was on that Friday, I told you that he was my favorite because even though he's not the scorer that Smith is, he has what the Sixers need right now, which is a guy who will just do everything. The same way that we see DeAnthony Melton and PJ Tucker, where they'll give that extra effort to dive on the floor, make those defensive plays, things of that nature. And while I'm not saying that he's going to come in and do that right away, because I think he's going to spend a majority of his time, if not the entire season, with the Bluecoats, I just see something in him where you see the value of the players that I just mentioned in both Tucker and Melton. I made the comparison also after the Denver Nuggets won the championship, where you look at Bruce Brown and what he was able to do at 6'4", 6'5", and have an impact. Now, the shooting and the ball handling is a little bit different at this stage of Bruce Brown's career. Bruce Brown played point guard in college too. Council played a lot on the ball also, especially during the tournament when they were making their run. He was their best player, even with Black and Smith on the floor with them, who were first-round picks in this year's draft. So you could see, again, as you talked about the dunks and all that stuff, that's what Ricky Council does. He just runs the floor. He will fill the lane. He is a player who is a do-it-all type of player that I am very, very intrigued to see if they can develop that out with the Bluecoats that will eventually mean minutes with the 76ers. Not saying this year. I'm just saying at some point, because he has that type of approach, that type of mentality that is a winning type of mentality, especially in the NBA where you have to carve out a role in the league. So those two, plus Shepard as well with the guards. And we know how it goes, man. In the summer league, it's really about guards and wings. The big men, unless you are Victor Wembanyama and those types of players, other than that, you're really not going to, it's really the guard play. It's like all-star games. It's the guard play.
What about Philip Pretzasev? How do you feel about his play?
So far, a little quiet, a little underwhelming. And for him, I also, again, it's the summer league. A lot of times, big men, unless you are a high pick and someone that they're really invested in, you may not get those. Like Kenny Lofton Jr. for the Memphis Grizzlies, they're somewhat invested in him, and we know he's very, very skilled anyway. So it's a different comparison. But I'm just pointing out that certain big men will get opportunities where others do not. Him coming into the NBA, if he's going to be anything in the league, his stuff is rebounding and setting screens, all the little things that you find your niche in the NBA. So far, underwhelming, but we have plenty of more games to find out what he truly is in this summer league setting before they really make a decision if he's going to be on this roster next year or playing in the G League, whatever he's going to be doing. So very, very, very underwhelming so far, but nothing that is necessarily bad, but also nothing that stands out right now in a good way either. So that's where I am with him. All right. The man who's coaching this team during the upcoming season is coaching them in Summer League. A little bit surprising. So let's talk about Nick Nurse in the Summer League, not having any of his assistants coaching. He's coaching these guys, and I would imagine he's going to do so with the Summer League team in Las Vegas as we get prepared for that. We'll talk about Nick Nurse's impact so far through 2 games. If you've noticed anything, right here, Locked On 76ers. Welcome back. That's Keith Pompey. Devon Givens here, Locked On 76ers. And Keith, Nick Nurse coaching Summer Sixers. I was surprised that he was going to be doing it. I thought that maybe Bobby Jackson, having coached already in the G League and been an assistant, figured he would be the one that would have the opportunity to do so for the Summer Sixers. And maybe that will be the case once they get to Las Vegas. But for these 3 games, Nick Nurse so far is coaching the team in the Utah and the Salt Lake City Summer League. A little surprised by it for me. So what do you think, man? What do you think of Nick Nurse coaching this squad?
I think it's good. I mean, it's look, let's face it. Right now you got young guys like Jaden Springer, Philip Pretzasev, and you have Lewis King. 3 guys who are probably candidates to make the team, and in a limited role or just as bench players. You also have these 2-way guys. I mean, he has a lot of decision to make, and this is great for them to impress the coach. It's good for him to implement his system to see what they're doing. I like it a lot, and it says a lot about him. I mean, there are several coaches who don't want no parts of this, not whatsoever. And it's funny because they lost that first game and they didn't close out well in that first game. And, the second game, the intensity level was just different. It was kind of like he read the riot act at him and he got him motivated. And, I really like this because, you can't, how many times do you say to a guy will say, well, coach never gave me that opportunity to show what I can do. Well, you're getting this opportunity right now. All of them are right now. They're getting an opportunity.
Right.
You're getting, you're getting more gym time with the head coach than Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris is right now. So, I like it a lot. I really do.
Yeah, and you also saw that it made some Nick Nurse, as you said, they maybe read the riot act to how they finished out that, last game against Memphis. And in this one, they made some adjustments, and you could see it also from the very start of the game, as the game played out, and certainly how things ended. Contributions all around. The effort was there, and I think it's a good thing for these young guys because look, they're all trying to find their footing in the league, and they're all trying to make their names and have the organization understand. The 2-way guys, especially with Smith and Council, Petrusev, wherever things are with him, Nick Nurse will make a decision on if he wants him on his team or at least trying out for the team or not. That's one thing. But for the others, we know it's a showcase not only for the Sixers organization, but for the others around the league. And what is going to be the word seeping out about them, spreading around the league of who they are, what their work ethic and all that stuff is about. So this is a good opportunity for them to be coached by an NBA coach. As you just talked about, it's not an assistant, it's the head guy. And he doesn't have to be here, but he wanted to set the tone, set the standard for the young players like Springer and the names that we mentioned, the newcomers, of this is what it's going to be like if you're going to be around. Can you handle this? And he can now read along with the assistants and some of the player development people. We still see Reggie Redding is there and some of the others that, hey, this is what it's going to look like. And I do like the fact that Nick Nurse is doing it. Now, again, is he going to do it throughout the entire Summer League in Las Vegas? Don't know if he's going to do it at all. But right now, I think this is a good thing for these young players and for Nurse to kind of set the tone for these young players that will be there at training camp in late September, early October.
I agree. And the word I'm hearing is like, a lot of people are happy with what's going on. Players, coaches, I feel like it's just a breath of fresh air, so to speak. And nothing against Doc. It's just that sometimes when you have changes, it's different things. You get a different voice.
A new voice.
A new voice. Yeah.
Yeah, nice little breath of fresh air
Mm-hmm.
for some of these. And if that's the case, then it's normally from the other people who are left over from the staff, the the player development people and trainers and all that stuff, and even with the players, that's where that typically comes from. So good stuff, man. Keith, as always, good to be with you. We have one more to give everybody, and this week, as we round out this week on a Friday and discuss the latest with the 76ers, and maybe even look at what they still have left to do with this roster now that they've added two veterans in Patrick Beverley and with Mo Bamba. We thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. Every day is tomorrow on the show. Hang out with us and we'll continually talk about the offseason and what may be next for this basketball team. Keith, do you mind letting the good folks know where they can find us?
Yeah, you can find us wherever you get this podcast at, like always, the other ones. This is free and available. You can also reach us on our YouTube or follow us on our YouTube channel, Locked On 76ers. And when you do that, what you need to do is click on that Liberty Bell. You click on the Liberty Bell, you become a new subscriber. In addition to that, you'll get notifications when we have new podcasts. But make sure tonight, listen to my man D on the Divine Giving Show from 6 to 10 p.m., right? In addition to doing that, you need to follow my man D on Twitter at DivineG975. You can also follow me on Twitter at Pompey on Sixers, and you can read my articles in the Philadelphia Inquirer at Inquirer.com online. Inquirer.com with the I.
All right, man. Appreciate it. Thanks. We'll chat tomorrow, man, for Friday edition. Thanks, man.
All right, bro. Peace.